What's going on, you guys? My name's Ian and this is my 1994 Toyota Supra Turbo. So originally I was looking for a twin turbo 6-speed manual, but when this popped up I could not say no. So it's an all original 1994 Toyota Supra Turbo with the automatic. However, I just finished up doing a 6-speed manual swap with the T56 Magnum F Grannas Racing kit. Just finished swapping it up in my garage and I'm super excited because it has completely transformed this car. It went from being a pretty freaking fun automatic, honestly. There's no hate on the automatic, but driving a 6-speed Supra, there's truly no comparison. So I'm starting a brand new YouTube. All of these videos are going to be posted up. I have a lot more coming with a lot more stuff that I'm changing out on this car. ECU is going to be next, but enjoy these videos. All right, so this is everything that comes in the kit. Here is the Willwood clutch master cylinder engraved with Grannas Racing on it. It's got the brackets already installed, everything's in place. It's got the actual fork that goes into the actual clutch pedal here with all of the valves. Looks like the bleeders in there, banjo bolt, and then the actual pin. Here you have the actual clutch pedal assembly. It's already pre-assembled. Got the pins in there all in place. Here is the brake pedal and here's your pads. Here is the flywheel. This is the line for the clutch master cylinder to go down to your slave. This is a Grannas Racing shift knob. I'm probably not going to open that later until I install it. I'd rather just keep things in order. And then this is your Bluetooth speed sensor adjustment for your actual speed when you're driving. Make that adjustment later. Here is a short shifter. I'm pretty excited for this because I see that it fits absolutely perfect like V160 right where it should be. So getting excited just thinking about it. Here is your pilot bearing. So specific to the T56 input shaft. External diameter is perfect for the back of the crankshaft on the 2JZ GTE. This is all your bolts. More bolts. This is the Mark IV bracket, marked by Joel Grannas. I'll open that when the time is due. Now this is the actual adjustment bracket. You gotta have a dial indicator and install this on the bell housing to make sure that your actual dowels themselves are gonna be perfectly lined up so you don't put extra load on the input shaft bearing when you're driving. Prematurely wearing out that bearing is gonna suck. This is my McLeod, I think that's how you say it, McLeod Tuner Series clutch. Ended up going with the sprung setup. This is good for about 600 wheel, I believe. Not a big deal. I don't plan on making much more than that for a little while. Budgeting, unfortunately. And then this is the rest of the clutch, some more parts. I highly doubt I'm gonna need anything from here. However, this was a direct shipment to me from McLeod since it was on back order. No big deal. And then this is the actual throwout bearing from Tilton. Boom, boom, boom. This thing looks sick. I'm so excited to install all this stuff. All stainless steel braided lines. I mean, man. And then we have our transmission. I actually haven't even taken this out yet. Probably not gonna do that right away. But here it is. And I almost forgot to show you guys this brand new Toyota Supra. Oh man, look at that, Series 1. This thing is perfect. Man, I am so excited. As you can see on the Supra, it's actually in pretty great condition. The rest of the actual panels are still so crisp. The factory auto, I guess this is the most touched area. This is pretty beat up. I mean, this has just got so much wear. I'm gonna need to order a new ashtray, definitely. But the rest of the panels here are just so crisp and clean. It's still in great condition. I mean, this car, 54,000 miles when I bought it. I mean, I still can't believe it. The leather is so plush and soft still. Rear seats obviously look like they've never ever been sat in, and probably haven't. Target bolts are all perfect. The liners are perfect. I mean, once I get this out on the road, I'll show you guys when it's got better lighting in the sun. Unfortunately, it's super cold out right now, and there might still be some salt on the road. I decided to take off the target top so I'd have more space when I'm taking out the seat. So that way I can lay down in there and get to the actual clutch pedals. So it's just 14 mil bolts all around. These brackets just pop right out. You just gotta walk them through. And then once they pop out, just take out the bolts, and then I'll pull the seat in just a second, probably vacuum first. Okay, so right now I am right at the pedals, trying to remove the actual brake pedal for the automatic. So I just took out the screw back here. Actually, I took off the nut right here. I'm about to push this screw out. There's a crush washer and an actual washer that are sitting right here, so I just keep them lined up and put them off to the side. The spring right here, simply just pop this right out. There we go. We'll just let it hang. And then I'm gonna be pulling this pin out. All right, I'll try that in a sec. Pull that pin out. Keep this aligned right here. That's for the actual clutch, the brake switch. And then the pedal should be out in no time. All right, things got a little stressful under there for a second. Luckily, I was able to pull the bushing out from underneath the car. You gotta get a tool, something like this. Well, at least this is what worked for me. So I was able to put this in right there, expand it, and then pull the bushing out, and then the brake pedal fell right out. Now I just got to switch everything over to the new pedal, all the plastic bushings that are here on the sides, and then I'll be able to focus on drilling the hole for the firewall. All right, so I already drilled through the center. I had to customize with my drill bit since I didn't have a big enough drill bit. Instead of running out to the store, I just started grinding around to make the holes bigger. So I'm gonna finish up that, make them a lot more round, and then I'm gonna spray this up. I just sprayed it up with some primer. I'm waiting for it to dry up, and then it's time to install the clutch pedal. All right, so I got the exhaust out. Now this is facing the front of the car. It's the O2 sensor hanging. And taking off the heat shields now. About to take off this bracket, and then I'll have some space to get to the drive shaft. And I gotta still disconnect all these parts from the automatic transmission. So I had to get a 3/8 electric ratchet. I couldn't use anything bigger than a 3/8 in order to fit it over this subframe area right here, and then put a swivel socket in there so that I'd be able to get to the torque converter bolts. I got all 6 of them out. So I was using a 1/2 inch with a 17 mil socket. However, I felt like I was about to strip these bolts, so that's not a good day. What's going on, you guys? So unfortunately, yesterday I wasn't able to finish the clutch master cylinder install. I spoke with Grannas Racing. It turns out that I actually had a defective clutch master cylinder bracket. So this is the Willwood, and this is his product right here. Unfortunately, it wasn't fitting, so it was defective. After I spoke with him, he actually had heard about the issue before, so he has made adjustments to it since this is a new Willwood product that he's using. I was able to already loosen all these brackets for the radiator. Took off the coupler hoses. Everything's loose. Battery terminals are off. Should be good to go, so I can pull the transmission out. I already got the exhaust out. That was the seat whenever I was working on the inside of the car. I had to take that out so I could do the pedals, some heat shields, and yeah. So I was able to get all of the lines, brackets off of the radiator for the automatic transmission. It's hard to see, but these lines are completely loose. There's about I think it was 3 bolts, 2 are 10 mil, one's a 12. And now the lines are completely loose. I'm considering taking them off. Haven't decided on that yet. I'm gonna need some 15 mil line wrenches for this. But that's only if I don't have enough space. So we'll see. I'm starting to take off the actual drive shaft. Just took out these 14 millimeter bolts right here. Bracket is loose. So that's good to go. Looks like there was a washer on the back. Yep, washer's on the back. And now this drive shaft is loose in the middle. Once I take off these 14 mil bolts up here, should be good to go. And then just take off those bolts in the back. I already detached it from the transmission, took it off the rear diff. I just need to take out this bracket. Probably should have did that right before, but didn't want the drive shaft to just slip out and fall. Oh yes, almost there. I can finally see all of the bolts for the transmission. All the way in the back. I gotta get those starter bolts on the left, and then there's some bolts on the right. So now I'm taking out the starter bolts. They're super long bolts. I already got one out right there, and then the other one is up top right there where the bracket is. Transmission is out. Heck yes. 10 out of 10 would not recommend doing this on jack stands. Seriously, what a pain in the... All right, guys, so got some more work done on the car. So I was able to cut out the center area. As you know, the automatic transmission tunnel is a lot smaller and sits a lot lower than the manual transmission. So in order to make a T56 Magnum F fit, you actually have to trim out this entire area. You get a template from Grannas Racing. So what I did was I cut from underneath the car, you know, I disconnected all of this. This is the airbag. Yeah, that's the airbag unit right there. Make sure you disconnect that. Always make sure your battery is completely disconnected before you take anything off from the airbag. Always be safe. So obviously the battery's been disconnected for a couple of days. So if this car had any capacitors, it's already been discharged. So all of this has been disconnected. I moved it out of the way. This was an extra cable, so I just used this to tie it down. It was just in my hand, so I used this instead of like a freaking rubber band, which I could have used, but whatever. The goal is just to get all of the cables out of the way. So this is just a little bit of extra primer that I got to take off. No big deal. I'm going to sand it down. It's actually coming off right now with my nail. So what I did was I taped this entire area up, and then I put a freaking bag on top just to make sure that when I sprayed it from the underside of the car, nothing would be sprayed in the cabin. So it actually came out perfect. You know, I'm gonna clean this up, get a wet rag, and make sure all this crud from 1994 until today has been cleaned up. And then this was completely sanded. I mean, it's smooth to the touch. I got it perfect. And this, I'll show you the coating now. I got it from 3M. It's a rubberized coating. Check this out. I'm so excited about this. I mean, it looks pretty much like OEM. It's still drying right now, but as you can see the rest of the car, I mean, it's the same rubberized coating. It might be a little bit more glossy, I guess I could try to blend it in a little bit, but it's really not a big deal. It's completely protecting the car. That's all that matters. I don't want any rust happening, so yeah. All right, so now I'm about to do the rear main seal. So it's hard to tell. I think it may have been already replaced in the past, but it looks like it's only leaking right down here where the gasket sealer is supposed to go. I'm not sure why. It doesn't look like it's actually coming from the rear main itself, but not a big deal because I'm going to pull this entire bracket off, pop out the rear main seal, and when I go to replace it and put the bracket back on, I'm going to make sure that this is all glued up properly and put some pressure on it so that when it seals up, it's completely leak-free and should be good to go. But before I do that, that water line all the way up there, it's hard to see, that water line right up there with the line on it, that is the heater core line. So that line was actually leaking when I first bought the car. This was a Florida car, so obviously they probably never ever turned on the heat. So I came up here, started getting a little chilly, and I turned on the heater core, and obviously a couple days later it just started leaking. Not a big deal. So I replaced that line already about 8 months ago. However, you know, I'm not all the way back here, so now is the perfect time to clean all this up. Just gonna use a little brush, probably plastic brush, and then a little bit of spray 9. That stuff is strong, so I don't think I'm gonna need too much. It's not a lot that's around this area. So once I clean it up, I'll get started on the rear main. What a difference that made. So I was able to clean all of this gunk out of all of these areas. All of this got cleaned up. It looks super fresh. I wasn't able to get into the small crevices right there, but it's really not a big deal. My brush could only go so far. So now I'm going to do the rear main seal. I'll pop all this out and use a razor, take off all that old gasket, and then once I pop in the new rear main seal into this bracket, I'm going to pop that in place, put some fresh sealant, that nice goo, make sure it's sealed correctly. I'm going to push down on this while I'm tightening these bolts by hand, snug them all the way up, torque them to spec, and then just should be good to go. All right, guys, so I still have not done the rear main seal, and that's because I just spent the last 2 hours cleaning all of the threads on the back of the crankshaft. So it's very important that all of these threads are completely clean. So the reason for that is a fastener acts as if it was a spring. When a fastener gets installed, it stretches out. Now, a fastener wants to be back to its normal size, so it's constantly adding pressure so that it closes itself. Now, that pressure is what we use to keep the flywheel stamped onto the back of the crankshaft. That pressure is holding it against the back of the crankshaft. Now, if there's any crud or dirt in there, that will affect the fastener's stretch, where the fastener may not stretch properly and you think it's torqued to the specification, but in reality, it's just dirt giving you false readings. So you got to make sure all of this is completely clean, and then you can install the flywheel properly. Just like that, she's out. All right, so I finally got the rear main seal out from the housing. So first I tried to do it the proper way. Then I got aggressive and I drilled some holes and put some screws in here to try to pry it out. That didn't work. So I put this thing in the freezer for about 20 minutes and then came out here and grabbed this Phillip head and just put it inside the lip like this, obviously while it was still installed, and then just smack the crap out of it on the ground and it popped right out. So do what you gotta do. So now I'm gonna clean this completely to the best of my ability, try to make it look like brand new, and then I'll do the same to the rear of the crank and that entire area, take off all that sealant so I can apply a new coat. All right, I got it looking pretty good. So the goal is to have a perfect seal. So that was my main focus. So I had to alternate between these 3 brushes, only using the steel one when I absolutely had to. I was using this pick to get into all of the little crevices and get all that gunk out, especially in the hole areas for the bolts. So now I got to focus on the back of the engine and make sure that thing looks spotless. So I just finished cleaning out all of that old silicone out of all of the grooves. Everything's clean, everything's good to go. Got all of this old silicone scraped off, out of the threads, off of the dowels, everything. It's good to go, completely clean. Wiped it down with a rag to make sure that there's no residue or nothing left. I try to get it close to these corners right here so that when I put the new silicone bead in, I'll be able to route it all the way through on the inside of the bolts always, so that it doesn't leak past, because if you put it on the outside, that's when oil can get into the threads and it'll actually leak from the front where the head bolts are, or the head of the bolt rather. So after this is all cleaned up, I just got to lay the bead down and ready to install pretty quickly. So about to put it on the car. Got to get the upper oil pan right now. All right, so I just put the silicone on. So as soon as I applied it, I started putting the bolts on, so I'd snug it up and it started to squeeze out the sides, which is perfect. There's barely any that is on the inside where the actual housing for the crankcase. So none of it really spewed out. It'll give it a nice bead. You can probably see it from there. Yep, that shiny black. Now on the bottom, I just cleaned this up, try to make it look as clean and simple as possible. All right, the rear main seal is on. So accidentally put a little bit too much lube and it was slipping and sliding all over the place. So what I had to do was just hold it on by one side, and I used a 3/8 extension like this, and I just simply had one hand here, and then with the other hand I was tapping it in all the way around, and make sure the lip on either side is not getting caught. The inside lip, it can easily get caught on the crankshaft, so make sure that's not happening. Obviously, same thing with the outside on the housing. So when you're pressing it in and holding it on one side and tapping it, always pay attention to that. So it actually helped just a little bit for me to just slightly push the lip inward very gently. There's a metal spring inside this, so you do not want to pop that out. So very gently, just to get the lip right over the crank, and then just press in or tap in depending on where you are. And once you get the seal over the crank, you're pretty much in the zone. All you got to do now is make sure it's completely flush with the housing. So you do not want this seal pressed in further than the housing. It has to be completely flush. Now I'm just only speaking for this 2JZ GTE, and I'm assuming a lot of other cars are the same, but only referencing this car when I'm talking about that. It's gonna take about 15 to 16 hours to completely cure. So tomorrow I'll put oil in the engine, then I'll install the flywheel so I can do the bell housing indexing.